Good evening, and welcome to another episode of OmenG's Stupid Scary Stories. I told you today I was going to do 2 stories because I didn't do one Friday like I said I was going to, so once again I'll be reading from Connecticut Ghost Stories and Legends by Thomas D'Agostino and Arlene Nicholson. Tonight's story of terror, New London's Ledge Light. While peering into New London Harbor, a rather strange sight looms over the briny tide. At first, a surveyor of this spectacle might deduce that one of the stately mansions has somehow taken on sea legs and is drifting into the great blue. It seems rather anomalous that such a building would be sitting in the middle of the harbor, but yes, it is there. It is actually a lighthouse. The New London Ledge Lighthouse resembles a majestic Second Empire home, and there is a good reason for its architecture to be so splendid. Why it is haunted, however, is a matter of conjecture. There are stories, but none with exact confirmation. Be it so, activity of the ghostly report runs rampant among the walls of this one-of-a-kind beacon. Read on and perhaps you might help solve a bit of a conundrum as to who actually might haunt one of the most unique of Connecticut's haunted habitats. The Ledge Light was one of the last lighthouses built in New England. This red brick edifice, topped with a mansard roof, sits near the entrance of New London Harbor on the extreme eastern edge of the Long Island Sound. Its distinct French Second Empire style came about at the request of the wealthy homeowners along the shore who wanted the structure to keep in harmony with the elegant appearances of their coastal estates. Unfortunately, many of these fashionable homes were destroyed in the hurricane that swept through New England on September 21st, 1938. The lighthouse was established and built in 1909 to replace the inefficient New London Harbor Light. As New London became more of an industrial mecca, it became necessary to direct vessels through the perilous ledges of the harbor. The light is built upon a concrete and riprap platform. A riprap deposit, 82 square feet by 10 feet deep, protects this foundation. A 50 square foot pier rising 18 feet above low water was constructed with a cellar and 2 cisterns to collect water for the 58-foot high lighthouse. It was originally called the Southwest Ledge Light, but the name was changed because there was a light in New Haven that had already claimed that moniker. The fourth order Fresnel lens held an incandescent oil vapor lamp that could be seen up to 18 miles away and was rotated by a clock mechanism that required winding every 4 hours. The original lens is now in the custody of the Custom House Museum of Maritime History in New London. Each lighthouse has its own characteristic signal so mariners can easily determine their position along the coast while en route to their destination. The present optic at the Ledge Light, a solar-powered lens, has 3 white flashes followed by a red flash every 30 seconds. The foghorn gives off 2 blasts every 20 seconds. During the hurricane of 1938, Howard B. Beebe was on duty as keeper. The waves came through the second-floor windows of this 3-story building, forcing him and his assistant to take refuge in the cast-iron light tower that sits on the mansard roof. After the hurricane, Coast Guard crews were stationed at the light to keep it lit until it was automated on May 1st, 1987. The day the light went automated was obviously a monumental event in more ways than one in regard to one of the guardsmen, for he wrote in the log, "Rock of slow torture, Ernie's domain. Hell on earth, may New London's ledge light shine on forever because I'm through. I will watch it from afar while drinking a brew." As far as the ghosts of the lighthouse, there is a popular belief that the haunting is caused by a man named John Ernie Randolph. Randolph is said to have lived at the light with his wife. If this were true, then he would have been an assistant or perhaps even a keeper between the years of 1938 and 1981. There is also a discrepancy as to who the main keepers of the light were between 1915 and 1926. Jeremy D'Entremont, president of the American Lighthouse Foundation and author of several books on lighthouses, performed extensive research on the history of the light and found that the names from that era were not recorded in any single payroll, archive, or record book. He also confirmed my suspicion that if a keeper had died at the light, there would have been some newspaper record or other documentation. He did not, however, rule out that from 1915 to 1926, a man named Ernie or Randolph may have been a keeper at the light. New England Ghost Project set forth another theory that the ghost could be that of a construction worker who fell from the roof of the light during the original construction of the building. This opens up a probability that Ernie might actually have been an unrecorded keeper, a worker at the light, or, as Mr. D'Entremont also explained, a name given by the Coast Guard keepers to explain the strange occurrences at the ledge. Either way, the discrepancy in records and other historical data lends more credence to the ghostly legend. As the legend goes, Randolph's wife could not take the seclusion of the lighthouse and became very depressed about living in the middle of the bay with very little contact with the outside world. She implored him to take another job on the mainland, but the keeper was steadfast in his duty. One day, she vanished from the light. He later found out that she had sailed off into the sunset with the captain of a Block Island ferry. Poor Ernie was so distraught that he climbed to the top of the light, slit his own throat, and dove into the waters below. His body was never found, and from that moment on, Ernie was said to be the ghost that haunts the ledge light. When the Coast Guard became keepers of the light in 1939, cadets constantly witnessed doors opening and closing on their own and would have the bed covers tugged on or just plain wrenched right off the bed as they unsuccessfully tried to sleep. Televisions would mysteriously come to life with no one there to switch the units on. This was, in many cases, before the days of remote controls, so one would have to walk over to the set and turn the unit on by hand. The foghorn was also prone to ethereal antics. Even on the clearest of days, the horn would begin to wail. When inspected, it was always found to be in perfect working order. Some of the keepers would prepare to swab the decks of the light, but upon emerging onto the deck from the house, would stand there flabbergasted, as the decks were somehow inexplicably already washed down. Boats docked and tied securely would suddenly unknot and start drifting out to sea. The 2009 multi-award-winning WGBY documentary, Things That Go Bump in the Night, Tales of Haunted New England, tells an account by Guardsman Bill Rhodes Jr. Young. Mr. Rhodes was stationed at the light from August 1979 to January 1980. Producer Anthony Dunn and videographer Mark Langevin interviewed Mr. Rhodes about his experience at the lighthouse for the documentary. With permission from all parties, I am able to present, in Mr. Rhodes' own words, an excerpt from that interview. Here's what he had to say. I was stationed in New England's Ledge Lighthouse from August 1979 until January of 1980. I start to hear stories from these guys that have been there about Ernie. You know, this guy that was a lighthouse keeper who supposedly his wife was fooling around or something. There was some kind of murder or something happened out there, and he is supposedly haunting the place. I'm 18 years old, and I'm like, yeah, right, this is a bunch of crap. I didn't believe it. But I remember one night, I was on the watch, working from 11 to 7. I had been hearing things creaking and groaning up there. Now, I had been up there earlier and everything was closed, and the door had a latch on it that you really had to throw hard. It was made to withstand hurricane force winds and weather, so it was heavy. It was not going to open by itself, and that door was open. Now how that happened, I don't know. I cranked Cranked up the light for about 30 seconds just to make sure it was going. Closed the door, went downstairs, and I never went up there again at night. You know, when you are 18, you're not scared of anything, but when I was up there by myself at night, I ain't like it. I ain't like it. I ain't like it at all. I truly did not like it after that. It made me nervous. So, that one assignment to the station changed me. It did change me a little bit about the way I think about things. Karen Mosey, noted EVP expert for ECTO, a professional paranormal group of the highest caliber out of New Hampshire, once caught another voice on her recorder that may not be that of Ernie. As Karen asked questions in hope of getting an answer from the other side, she happened to inquire if there was anything she could do for the spirits. When she played back the recorder, she heard a voice loud and clear say, "Help me, I'm cold." The investigators were later told of an account of a vessel that crashed on the ledges near the lighthouse, and the father and daughter succumbed to the ravages of the sea before they could be saved. A keeper heard his name called several times while descending the ladder from the light tower. Although this may not seem monumental on the surface, it was rather disconcerting to the man, as he was supposedly the sole occupant of the ledge at the time. A woman and her children once stayed at the light and got a visit from what may have been the ghost of Ernie. She was suddenly awakened one evening by something at the foot of her bed. As she focused her vision, she distinctly saw a semi-transparent figure of a man in a rain hat and slicker. The gaunt apparition stood over 6 feet tall and sported a beard. She was not the only one who witnessed the resident ghost, as her children were with her when the maritime spirit decided to pay them a visit. Many other paranormal groups have investigated the light with the conclusion that the place is truly haunted. Some also experience cold spots or a feeling that they are being watched. But remember, it is in the middle of a harbor where the night air can be damp and chilly. The eerie seclusion can also make one think that he is not alone on the minute ledge. This does not take away from the century of haunts that swathe the light in a cloak of mystery. Whether it is Ernie or a few others who have made the signal their eternal refuge, it can be assured that the light ledge is ceaselessly aglow with spirits. Tours of the lighthouse available through Project Oceanography, Avery Point. And that's who I called one day, because I wanted to find out more about who this ghost was. Some say it's Ernie, some say it's a daughter and father washed ashore, but I wanted to find out exactly what it was. Now this time I decided I'd leave Rosamul at the house. I didn't need him doing anything crazy while we were in the middle of the ocean, pissing anybody off or any ghosts off. I didn't want to get pushed into the ocean. That wouldn't have been good. So I left him home. I went by myself. Now the tour was like any tour. You know, you get on a boat, they take you out there, they go around it and shit real quick. You get to see the shore and blah, 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 blah. And they dock, you get off, they show you this part, they show you that part, they bring you up to the light, and then they have like that little seance shit, yada, yada, yada. Nothing was going on. Nothing at all. So I spoke to the tour guide separately. I said, hey, listen, you know what? If it's possible, I'd like to stay here overnight. I flashed a few Benjamins, and he got my drift. He pocketed the money and said, just make sure you miss the boat. There's a small cellar. You go through the door on the left, you can hide out in there and nobody will know. I was like, you sure? He's like, yes, the lighthouse is fully automated now. There's no need for anybody to stay here. I was like, cool. So there's going to be no one here, just me, right? Just me? Yes. If you hear or see anything, trust me, it'll be the paranormal type. Although me personally, I've never seen shit. As many tours as I've done here, I haven't seen a goddamn thing. So I don't know if it's necessarily true or not. But, maybe you'll find out something. I was like, cool, thanks. Night fell. Walked around with my light, asking questions and shit, recording stuff. But there was nothing to be heard. Nothing to be seen. Starting to get bored, and I realized that I was stuck there until the next day, which sucked because, there's like nothing to entertain myself with in the middle of the ocean. I forgot to bring extra stuff with me for entertainment purposes. Because at first I wasn't really planning on staying the night. It was kind of like a spur of the moment thing. I mean, at least I had my charger for my phone. So what I decided to do was sit up in the light tower and watch some YouTube videos and shit. Of course, me being me, I was watching like scary videos and stuff, which I shouldn't have done, because now all of a sudden I'm like hearing things, and it's the ocean splashing up against the rocks and shit. But every time I would hear like something crash against the rocks, I'd be like, oh, right? You know what I'm saying? Being all paranoid and shit and acting like a jackass. And, you know, I turned off the stupid ass video, started watching some comedy shit. I'm laughing my ass off, eating some snacks, because I at least did bring snacks. You know, I always have snacks. I just didn't have any like real food. So I knew I was going to be hungry the next day. So while I'm sitting up at the light, I notice off in the distance what looks like the lights of a ship in the water. But they weren't like lights of a modern day ship. They looked like, you know, lanterns, flame and shit, because they were kind of dim, but it was obviously as bright as they could be, but they weren't bright enough. Anyway, I see this ship, or the lights of the ship, and they're getting closer, right? I'm thinking to myself, why would anybody be coming out here at night? It's strange. Strange, very strange. So I just kept watching, you know. There's these little binoculars that were in the light tower. I grabbed them and I looked through them. When I looked through them, I saw the name of the ship, which was the SS Johnston. Old-time boat. Looked like it couldn't have been past the age of maybe the 1800s. Like, you know, Civil War era type shit. Right? Now on the deck of this boat, I see 3 men. One of them is talking to the other one, and one's looking at a map. They're not looking up at the lighthouse for whatever strange reason. I don't know. Maybe because they don't want to pay attention. They looked real. But I'm thinking to myself, why is this old ass boat sailing in the middle of the night and shit? Are they doing some kind of like historical boat show tomorrow, and they just like are coming in to set up before, you know, the next day or something? I'm not thinking anything about like anything paranormal, because number one, there were no stories of a ship except for the ship that the, you know, father and daughter were on that like crashed, but they didn't say anything about any ghost ships. So I'm not thinking that there's any ghost ships. That was until I laid eyes on the paper that they had in their hand. It wasn't like a modern day atlas or anything like that. This was like what looked like parchment paper. And they had old-timey instruments that they were trying to navigate with. And I'm thinking to myself, even if this is like an old ship, right? You would still outfit it with modern day equipment and just keep the outside looking old and stuff. And you would put modern day navigation shit on there, because that would make sense. That would make sense. I mean, even with modern day equipment and shit, you can still get lost at sea. So I highly doubt that you guys would be sailing at night in an old-timey boat with old-timey instruments. I didn't see anybody with cell phones in their hand or nothing. So now I'm starting to feel a little bit, you know, weirded out. Now the boat is about, I'd say, 200 yards away from the lighthouse at this point. And it's still coming forward. Not super fast or anything, but, you know, at a decent pace. I'm still looking through the binoculars at the people on the deck. None of them are paying attention to the lighthouse. So I'm thinking to myself, should I, like, press the button on the foghorn and alert them? Yeah, maybe that's a good idea. So, I hit the horn button. Laying on this thing. I look through the damn binoculars, and they're not paying attention to it. None of them have looked up. It's like they're in their own little world, and they're completely oblivious to the lighthouse that they're getting ever so closer to. It was at that point when I heard a voice behind me say, "Watch out." Turned around and looked behind me, and there was nothing there, of course. I heard a door slam. Went to investigate. Once again, nothing. I went back and sat back at the light, the control panel, picked up the binoculars again and looked through them. At this point, I can see at least 5 to 6 people on the deck of this ship now, and they're in a panic. They're running around. It looks like they're trying to change course or something. I don't know exactly what they're doing because it's hard to tell from that distance, but I could see that they were panicking and running back and forth frantically, grabbing ropes, tossing ropes. And it was at this point when I heard and felt, I heard a noise that sounded like a boat crashing in to rocks, and I felt a shudder, shaking. I looked, and at the bottom of the base of the lighthouse were bodies in the water. Several, at least 7 or 8, and the ship had been broken into pieces. Part of it was sinking. I could see men clinging to it as it sunk down below the depths of the sea. A few seemed to have managed to make it up on the rocks. So of course, me being myself, I run down the steps, to get out the tower to go down and help these people that I've seen have crashed in to the damn lighthouse. I'm still thinking that they're real fucking people, just navigating an old boat with old-timey equipment. When I open the downstairs door to exit onto the platform where the pier is, there's nothing there. No one. Not a person, not a sinking ship, nothing. Now, of course, at this point, I'm completely flabbergasted. I know I saw something. I saw a ship. It crashed into these rocks. There were men swimming and sinking in some on these rocks. So, I walked around the platform to check just to see what was going on. Because I know what I saw. I'm not on drugs. I don't smoke marijuana. So I knew that there wasn't any chemical in my system that would have made me see things that weren't there. Now, unbeknownst to me, behind me was manifesting a figure. And this figure was a tall man of about 6 feet, wearing a raincoat with a beard, like described in the book. When I turned around, he was there, just standing, holding a lantern, kerosene light, in his hand. He pointed behind me. I turned to look, and what I saw was that same ship, sinking once again, but this time in flames. Why it was in flames, I'm not quite sure. I didn't ask any questions. I was kind of scared because this guy wasn't supposed to be here. And of course, me reading the book, I had heard who he was. Now, let me tell you what the ghost showed me. This ship that had crashed into the lighthouse was carrying none other than his cheating wife. His cheating wife and the ferry captain were on this ship. For what reason, I don't know. It was never made clear to me why they were on that ship, but they were on that ship. Heading in to the harbor, they were. Apparently, the Ernie guy, Randolph, who was still alive at the time, he didn't kill himself immediately after she left with the captain. Apparently, what had happened was when she left with this captain, she had found that he was a very abusive piece of shit. He was an asshole. You know, him being the captain of an important ferry, he felt like he was better than she was, especially since she left her good husband to go off with this dude. So he treated her badly. He didn't treat her nicely at all. So she got tired of it. She got tired of it, and she was actually on her way to return to her husband when this accident, if you want to call it an accident, occurred. Now, she had written to her husband and told him that she was coming home. She had said she was sorry for what she had done, and could he forgive her, and blah, 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 and that she would be back, and that the captain, for whatever strange reason, was accompanying her on this vessel because, at the very least, he felt he owed her that much. I don't know why, but that's what transpired. All right. So they get on the ship somewhere in New York, I believe. It was a supply ship of some sort. It was carrying kerosene fuel and other commodities and goods destined for the port of New London. Now, it's very rocky, kind of hard to navigate this area without the lighthouse. And since Ernie Randolph knew that his wife and this captain would be arriving at a certain time, he decided that he would keep the lights in the lighthouse on long enough for them to get into the area, but then he would turn them off once they were within the danger zone, where the rocks are sharp, jagged, and some of the water is shallow. Obviously, what happened was the ship ran aground, burst into flame, and many died right there on the ship. Some died from the fire, others drowned. But what happened to the wife and captain, well, they didn't die immediately, along with at least 5 others who were on the deck of the ship when it hit the lighthouse rocks. They were thrown onto the deck of the lighthouse, where the only person there that could save or help them was Ernie. And he had absolutely no intentions on saving his wife or the captain. And since he wasn't going to save his wife or the captain, he was not going to save the other 5 people who so happened to survive with them. Now, accounts here do not say anything about this vengeful Ernie Randolph. Like most of the accounts say, he slit his throat and jumped off the lighthouse. That much is true. But he didn't do it because he was heartbroken. He didn't do it because he was so hurt by the loss of his wife's love that he felt that he could not go on. No, the reasons that he did this were because he knew that come morning, they'd be looking for this ship. It was expected. You know, manifests were filed and shit. People knew the ship was supposed to be coming. When it didn't arrive where it was supposed to arrive, obviously the first place they're going to come check is the lighthouse. Questions will be asked, answers sought. And Ernie knew that he would not be able to explain how this ship crashed into the lighthouse. He wasn't even going to try to. So he did slit his throat. And he did jump into the water. But it wasn't because he was heartbroken. It's because he didn't want to face the music of the crimes that he had committed. Those crimes being murder. Murder. 35 men, 1 woman, lost their lives that night. And all because of his want for revenge. Now, I could have seen if he had let his wife get off the boat with the captain, somehow trick the captain up to have a glass of tea or something, and then bludgeon them to death, and then toss their bodies into the water where nobody would have known. But no, he decided to crash a whole fucking ship right into the damn lighthouse rocks. So, needless to say, his spirit still is imprisoned, in a way, at this lighthouse for eternity. It'll roam the rocks of the lighthouse. Now, one would think that this would mean that he is an evil spirit because of the evil things that he did. And truth is, he is trying very hard to atone for his sins. So he's actually not a bad spirit at all. Most of the time he's trying to help. There's been witnesses, me included, the night that I just so happened to stay, a storm came out of nowhere. Pretty bad one too. The wind was terrible. Visibility very low. The spray from the sea was just thick. Fog rolled in. A small tugboat had lost its way in the storm. And for whatever strange reason, I'm not 100% sure why this happened while I was there, but it did. After seeing all the crazy stuff that I saw with the ghost ship, I saw this tugboat, which was pretty much heading down the same path as this damn ship was. And it was moving pretty fast. And I'm thinking to myself, they cannot see the light. The wind is blowing the rain sideways. Visibility is 0. They're going to crash into these rocks and they're going to die. And that's when I heard him say, "Watch out," once more. And he put his ghostly hands on the light. And when he did so, the light shined so damn bright. I mean, it shined brighter than any light I've ever seen shine. This thing must have been able to be seen 200 fucking miles away. I almost blinded myself. It was fucking ridiculous. But either way, the light shined. And through this torrential downpour, the ship was able to see that the lighthouse was there. And they corrected their course and missed it. Didn't run aground, didn't end up, tragically dying or losing their lives. And it was Ernie Randolph who had made this possible. So, an evil spirit he is not. Did he do some evil things in the last moments of his days or day on earth? Yes, he did. And I believe now he is spending the rest of his eternal life, or ghost life, doing what he can to make up for those things that he did. And I hope that he does someday find the peace that he seeks. Anyway, I woke up in the morning refreshed, having learned exactly what spirits do roam this lighthouse. You have those of the people who crashed into it, which are only seen in small glimpses. It's as if those few minutes right up to the crash replays itself ever so often. Only Ernie seems to walk freely without being in some type of perpetual loop, stuck in time. Maybe the people on that ship were not as good as he was until he sought his revenge. But anyway, like I said, I woke up in the morning, I felt refreshed. I had learned what I wanted to learn, seen what I wanted to see. Another experience that I could chalk up. And I was glad I didn't bring Rosamund, because I can only imagine what Rosamund would have probably told freaking Ernie Randolph. He would probably be like, I'm the one that made your wife leave you in the first place. Because he's always doing some shit like that. He probably did. I wouldn't doubt it. Which would pretty much make Rosamund responsible for all of it. So technically, he probably is the one that did it, because why wouldn't Ernie be like sent straight to hell instead of staying at the lighthouse where he can still be of some service and provide help to people? I mean, he loved the lighthouse. He loved it. It's why his wife left him in the first place. I want to thank you all for joining me for the second story of tonight. I hope you enjoyed it. I tried to keep this one a little bit more serious for you guys. But remember, if you live on a lighthouse and you're married and shit, and your wife tells you that she wants to go to the mainland and you need to find another job, well, you probably should do that, because you don't want to end up like Ernie Randolph and have your wife leave you for a ferry boat captain only to come back and get crashed into the rocks because you're jealous and mad. Just leave the lighthouse and go, do what the wife wants to do. Happy wife, happy life. Unhappy wife, well, all hell will break loose upon you. You won't be, forget happy. You will find a misery unlike any misery you've ever known. Unlike any misery you've ever known. So the moral of the story, folks, is make sure you keep the little lady happy. Now that I've finished telling the story from the book, which was what? What was it? New London's Ledge Light. I think it's time for me to change the music and also change the mood. Shift into another story. Why not? 3 stories in a day. There's nothing wrong with such a thing, is there? Of course there's not. So let us have story number 3 of the day. Story number 2 of this evening. Now for that, I bring it back. It's one of my favorite musics that I love to use when it comes to telling stories that I make up from the top of my head. This is 1 hour of royalty-free horror music by Mark Vandermeulen. Yes, Mark Vandermeulen. These stories that I tell you, or this story that I'm about to tell you, is 100% true. In my mind. No, of course it's not really true. I'm just joking. Now, I've told tons of stories about all types of silly ass things. Corn coming to life, war with cows, rice, butter even, chicken, right? All these things I've told you about. Mice, insects. So I'm somewhat at a loss for what crazy tale I can tell you next. But I don't feel like getting off of the recording right now, so I'll just keep talking to circles until something catches my fancy. You know, it reminds me of this one time, right? I had traveled to the future. Yeah, I do all types of crazy shit. You guys know that. I have my own laboratory down here in my basement. In my studio, lab, / time machine / shrink machine / whatever the fuck I want it to be for the purpose of the story that I'm telling. So today, it's a time machine. And I went to the future because I wanted to see, like, with all the crazy stuff that's happening in the world right now, I wanted to see, like, what the world would be like in the next 100 years. Would there still be a world? Would it have been destroyed by a nuclear war or asteroids or some shit like that? I'm expecting the worst, obviously, because humans can be pretty fucked up things. You know, if you, look at the world at large and who is responsible for most of the terrible things that happen in the world, you'll see that it's us, human beings, that are pretty much responsible for the destruction and total annihilation of most things on the planet. So obviously I was expecting it to be a terrible, terrible place 100 years from now. But I was still curious and I wanted to see what, I could see. So I hopped in my time machine, set the date for 2123. Press the buttons for whirs and clicks, hums and buzzes, beeps, boops, bleeps, blops, a loud humming noise, a buzz, and a flash. Shook around and shit. Came to rest, of course, here because the whole entire structure travels into the future. I don't just go shooting into the future by myself. That'd make absolutely no sense. So basically my whole little studio here went to the future with me. So I had shelter when I got where I was going, just in case there was no shelter when I got where I was going, when I was going. It should be what I say, right? When I got when I was going. Not where I was going, because I was going to the same place that I was already in, but just in a different time. Does that make any sense? So, right? I wasn't going somewhere, I was going some when. Right? Let's not try to get our minds all blown out of proportion here with time travel paradoxes and shit. It would drive one crazy. But see, I knew at least that I wouldn't run into myself 100 years into the future and have to worry about potentially touching myself and then fucking up the whole timeline. So like, oh god, if I go to the future and I touch something in the future, it's not going to affect the past because it's already happened, right? So if it's already happened and I'm fucking with something that's not happened yet, but has happened when I get there, it shouldn't fuck with the past, right? No. Like, if I did see myself in the future, right, and I killed my future self, my past self would still be alive because I'm in the past, right? Does that make sense? Probably not, because time travel in itself makes absolutely no sense. Time, the concept of it at the very least, is a construct made by us to control one another. So, with that being said, I've completely and totally confused the fuck out of myself, and I have absolutely no idea what the fuck it is that I'm talking about anymore, except for the fact that I traveled 100 years forward in time. And I got out of my time machine expecting the worst. I was thinking I was gonna see like red polluted sky, clouds of acid and smog covering the landscape. I opened up my door. Creaked, because it creaks. And I looked out, and I was surprised to see green grass trees, vegetation, animals in abundance, bugs, all types of shit. Only thing was, I didn't see a whole hell of a lot of people. I mean, I saw what looked to be structures for the dwellings of human beings, but no human beings were in sight. Now, I wasn't too sure if I should go knocking on anybody's doors in the future. Me being a past person, I'm sure that 100 years of human evolution would have made us look quite different than we did 100 years previous. Like maybe we're taller or skinnier or whatever, I don't know. Well, it's a good thing I didn't go knocking on any fucking doors, because what I found out from observation was that they weren't fucking human dwellings. They weren't human dwellings at all. They were aliens. Yes, that's right. Aliens. Well, to them, I was the alien, right? Because what happened, from what I understand, archives and things that I happened upon in my travels of this land that I saw, was that Earth in the year 2035 was invaded by a species of aliens that came to save the Earth from us. Apparently, we were a project that was being tested from another alien species that they were not too fond of, where they would use this genetic mutation and they would take different DNA from the life of the planet, splice it with some of this alien DNA shit, and they created a race of beings that they could use to terraform a planet over the course of a few hundred years. But the thing was, it was very effective and it didn't cost much. All you had to do was send this DNA material to the planet in the shape of a asteroid or comet of some sort into a water supply, and then genetics and nature would do the rest. So these beings live a lot longer than we do, you know what I'm saying? And there's a reason for this. There's a very good reason for why we don't live as long as we do. And what happened is, through medical advancements and shit, you know, one race of alien did not like the fact that we were actually being used as tools, and that our life expectancy was only supposed to be about like 40 years. Like, you know, way back in the day, humans didn't live very long. In recent times, we've started to surpass by almost double what our life expectancy used to be. 40, 50 was about as long as you're supposed to live as a human being back in the days. But other aliens started giving us technology and knowledge and shit on how to live longer, because they thought that it would be better for us to live our lives as our own masters, which we always thought that we were to begin with, right? We had no idea, well, I had no idea until I got here in the future, that we actually were just a fucking science project that went horribly wrong. Like, horribly wrong, you know? Anyway, our original creators created us for the sole purpose of terraforming the planet. See, all the shit that we were doing, which was destroying the Earth for us, was actually preparing it for them. So what in effect was supposed to happen was we were supposed to die off. Then they could just come down here and, you know, live in the world that we terraformed for them. But their enemies realized what they were doing, and to stop them from doing so, they would give us better resistance to disease. They would teach us how to fly into space, give us technologies that would allow us not only to live longer, but also to bring destruction in a way that humans had never fathomed possible. I mean, right now, in our present day and age, there is enough nuclear weapons to destroy this earth 10,000 times. Why in the world do we need enough nuclear weapons to destroy the world even once? Does that make any sense? Of course it doesn't make any sense. There's no logic to this. See, we thought that these were our own desires. They're not. See, the aliens knew that by giving us this technology, it would threaten the entire project that this other race of aliens had been working on for like 15,000 years. Now, it's a long time for us. For them, it's a long time, just not as long a time as us, because they've been at their peak of evolution for the past 100,000 years. They've gone as high up as they will ever evolve. So to them, life doesn't change. So they live longer, obviously, than we do. Much, much longer. So 15,000 years to wait for a planet to be completely habitable, and all you have to do is fly there and take over, because we'll be dead, is not a long time for their species at all. But with us now having the capability to nuke this planet into a complete and total wasteland, things started to look bad. Now, you all remember, or I should say we all know now, there has been an abundance of UFO sightings, and everybody's wondering why. I'll tell you why, because I've been to the future, so I've seen exactly why these aliens are visiting us so much now. With the threat of nuclear war looming ever so closely these days and age, the aliens who have been waiting for this planet to be terraformed to their liking are now worried that we may take 15,000 years worth of fucking work and flush that shit right down the fucking toilet. That would not be good. Now, the race of aliens that have given us all this technology to destroy ourselves with actually thrive in an environment which would be one that we could create by nuking the hell out of this planet. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. If that's the kind of shit that they need in order to live on the planet, why don't they just nuke the planet themselves? They can't nuke the planet themselves, because then that would be seen as an act of war against this other race of aliens that created us in the first place, which would then therefore start a war with that race of aliens, and that race of aliens has technology that this other race of aliens can't even fathom. They wouldn't win a straight up conflict with this race of aliens. So they have to resort to these little tricks of getting us to fail and destroy the planet ourselves. At which point, the aliens that created us will abandon the project, and these other aliens can just come in and take over the planet. But, see, that's not what ended up happening. Now, were humans destroyed? Pretty much. Most of us were. But not by nuclear war. No. See, in the future, or shortly after this point in time, about 12 years from now, there's going to be an invasion. Yes. Or, what I should say, it's not really an invasion. 12 years from now, the aliens that own this planet are going to move in. They've pretty much just been fixing things up over the past 15,000 years, and in 12 years, they're coming to move into their home that they've been ever so patiently terraforming. And when that happens, folks, well, obviously, we won't be here anymore. At all. Like, none of us. And it's not gonna matter if you're rich, or if you're poor, if you're white, or if you're black, or purple, or brown, or green, or yellow. If you're a human being, which most of us are, there are a few hybrids. But those hybrids are only here to steer the course. And they're given specific knowledge that they don't understand what it is, but they use this knowledge, and this knowledge and these tools are things that help keep us in check. You guys don't seem to understand where COVID came from, or the common flu. These are all population control measures that have been instituted by the aliens that created us. Now, I know what you're thinking. I know exactly what you're thinking. You're thinking, this guy has lost his fucking mind, and he's talking complete and total nonsense. Am I? Am I? Haven't you ever wondered why civilization is greatest and most pollutant in areas of the third world, where the garbage of the world is burned? For what purpose, you say? What purpose? Look back at history, at our leaps and bounds and advances in technology. For 100 years, everything is the same, and then all of a sudden, there's just this freaking steep increase in the amount of technology that we have, and it comes in leaps and bounds. You go from fucking smacking rocks together to make fucking fire to heating your home with nuclear energy. And all this within the past 100 years. And you think that there is no coincidence between this increase in technology and knowledge, also the increase in visitors from the other world. Wake up, people. I don't know about you, but I kind of like living on the earth. I enjoy it. It's a nice thing. So, what I'm trying to tell you is, there's a way that we can turn this whole thing around. Now, it's going to involve cohabitating, if that's a word. I'm not sure if it is, but let's pretend for the sake of my story that it is a word. We're going to have to learn to live with these aliens that created us in harmony. And in order to do so, we're going to have to stop with the nuclear shit. Because nobody wins there. Nobody wins there. You know? What I learned is when they came down in 2035, we were at the precipice of pushing that button to nuke the planet. Now, of course, they had found out about the plan of the other alien race to give us this technology for us to destroy the planet. Now, there was a brief but brutal war between both of these factions. And it happened right here on Earth, right up under our noses. We didn't even notice because we haven't explored, 90% of our oceans? That's where a lot of them are actually chilling out and waiting to start the initial colonization of the planet. You know, a lot of people think that they're all just going to come in from space. That's expensive. That's expensive. They've had habitats built underwater for as long as there has been life on this planet. I'm telling you, these people, this race of aliens is ancient. Anyway, now the war was over relatively quickly in comparison to most of the wars that we're used to on this planet. It didn't last years. It lasted about 3 months. They conquered this race of aliens, foiled their plans, which was for us to destroy ourselves in 2035. Now, in 2035, what ended up happening was, as we were about to start global nuclear war, they came down. Now, they had seen a change in their people. A lot of their people were not too, happy with the idea of just wiping us all out. But they knew they couldn't have a great number of us still living on this earth. It just was too risky. But like I said, a lot of them had grown fond of the humans that they created, and therefore decided that they would keep small pockets of humans alive to continue to make sure the planet stayed in its particular balance, because the earth will repair itself, and if the earth repairs itself back to its normal self, then it becomes harmful for them, right? Okay, so what happened in 2035 was all the major powers around the world, all the presidents and kings and parliaments and congresses and houses of representatives and all those people who thought that they were in control were obliterated, like instantaneously. It was probably one of the scariest things to see in the historical archives that I found. Was they just instantly vaporized thousands and thousands of people, heads of state, heads of corporations, those people who were running the countries towards this nuclear Armageddon that would have benefited no one. Now, once they got rid of all of those people, they systematically removed any and all people with any scientific knowledge, except for a key few, which they locked up in these small hyperbaric chambers. If that's not hyperbaric? No, not hyper. Cryogenic. There we go. Cryogenic chambers. And they put them to sleep, but they kept them alive because eventually they knew they would have to release them back into the natural population of human beings to allow them to continue to do the terraforming that has to be done on a regular basis to keep the planet in balance for them. Fast forward 100 years, there are maybe 1 million human beings on the whole face of this earth. The aliens have taken it completely over, as was their intention in the first place when they first sent us here. Now, life 100 years from now isn't terrible. There's an abundance of food, clean water, clean air, plenty of animals. Some animals that went extinct now roam the earth again in harmony with nature. There's a balance. Of course, the earth itself isn't so happy about this and constantly tries to repair itself. So there are times of natural turmoil, like massive eruptions of volcanoes, massive earthquakes, storms unlike any ever seen, but life in itself is harmonious. It's harmonious. I wish I didn't see what I saw, because now that I know what I know that our days are numbered. 12 years, folks. 12 years. Life as we know it will no longer be as we know it to be. So while you have the chance, while you have the time to enjoy life, you should do so, because it is all going to change. And thank you for joining me.